Hey everyone, welcome to the Forgiven Podcast. I'm Pastor Mike Gordon, and with me I have Pastor Logan.
Tis I,
Logan, and we're going to be talking today about something which might seem elementary to those of you who perhaps have been a Christian for a long time, but I believe that it's important for us to be able to discuss. I think there are a couple of things that kind of put us onto that. I think one of them was the fact that we were comparing notes.
Yeah.
And you and I are unique. I guess we're not unique. We are what we call first generation Christians.
Yeah,
in the fact that our parents didn't lead us to the Lord. We had no kind of religious background coming to know Jesus, and God in His grace somehow reached out and found us in that. And so as we got talking about that, we began to realize how unique Christmas is to us, as opposed to perhaps somebody who has been born in a church and has had the Christmas experience their whole life. And so we want to talk about Christmas.
Yeah.
And go a little bit deeper into it, because sometimes we assume that everybody believes the same thing when it comes to Christmas. What do you think?
Well, it's one of those things that, like, when I went to Bible college, I had, like, the church I grew up in, they didn't do a Christmas Eve. From what I remember, they did the big singing Christmas tree, and it was this huge mega production of like a week-long show. They had a giant, like, 3-tiered Christmas tree choir, and I always, like, not always, but most years I helped out. I did sound, I did whatever. I held a spotlight one time. And so, like, for me, but, like, I didn't understand that was, like, normal for Christmas. And so when I started Bible college and I started, interning and becoming a pastor, and everybody's like, what are we doing for Christmas Eve? I'm like, I'm at home. Like, what are we, like, why are we going to church on Christmas Eve? It was just never something, like, in my, like, purview. I was like, this is so weird. I understand why, but I was like, couldn't we just do that the Sunday before?
We were grown up in a totally non-church environment.
Yeah, I mean, to clarify, I had some religious family members, but not to, like,
yes,
what a normal.
Whereas for me, it was totally so. Up until the time that I had become a Christian, I didn't even realize there was such a thing as a Christmas Eve service.
Yeah,
it was like, you went and you had your party on your Christmas Eve, and that was with your friends, and then you went and you had your party with your family, yep, which was on Christmas Day. And so, I think many times we make the assumption that everyone has kind of had this semi-religious experience when it comes to Christmas. And the more and more we are kind of going away from our roots as a society, as Christian, that is becoming more and more apparent. So we just thought it would be really good to maybe do a basic podcast on Christmas, the Christmas experience, some of the things that we believe as important as Christians that maybe not be so important.
Yeah. Even just understanding that, like, some of us who maybe have been Christians for a long time and everything, maybe we forget, maybe we get complacent, maybe Christmas starts to lose its, like, value and different things in it. And also, like, understanding that, like, we as Christians can celebrate Christmas in a way that isn't just going to church on Christmas Eve. Like, it's okay to celebrate with your family. Like, it's okay. Or maybe it's not okay. Maybe we'll differ on that, but I don't think we will. But it's discussing, like, what Christians do at Christmas, what Christmas as a Christian looks like.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It was kind of funny how over the years, as you have become a Christian, you become Christianized. Become part of this Christian community, and there's nothing wrong with a Christian community.
Not at all.
But you all of a sudden begin to assume things that you never assumed before when you were just a new Christian. It came to light to me one time, as I'd been a Christian for a number of years, and I was actually in ministry for a number of years, and I was pastoring in a church in Northern Ontario, and what happened was one of the youth in our church was having a time together with friends. They're doing a small group, and her friend, who wasn't really a Christian but was a close friend to hers, was invited to the small group, and eventually this girl ended up becoming my youth pastor. This girl who became a Christian.
Okay.
And she said she was at her friend's house, and they were talking afterwards after the small group, and she made a statement to her that shocked her, and it was this. She said, "You know what? You know that whole thing about the Christmas story about Jesus and Bethlehem and the stable and stuff like that?" She said, "Up until tonight, I didn't really believe that that was true. I thought it was something that happened, but it was something that happened in heaven. I didn't realize that it was actually a true story.
Yep.
Right. And I thought, wow. But then I thought, I wasn't too far from that when I had first become a Christian at the same age that she was probably at that time. And so many times I thought I would at least start off by saying, sometimes we assume things about Christian that people know. And even if you are a new Christian, sometimes we are under the impression that as soon as you become a Christian, you understand everything about Christmas.
Yeah, no, like even to this day, I still am learning things about Christmas and the meaning behind it and all that. You know, one of the very first like legit real like sermon on a Sunday or a Saturday night, Sunday morning that I got to speak was a Christmas themed message. And it was this idea that like we need to make room at Christmas. That was the whole theme that the senior pastor giving me. It was like make room. How it was like there was no room at the inn. There was no room for Joseph. There was no, you know, this idea of like there was no room. And I remember being like, I got to preach a Christmas message. Like, I don't get to like come up with my own. Like, I was still honored that I got asked to do it. But in the back of my mind, I was like, what is there to talk about at Christmas? You know, I was like, yes, like Mary, virgin birth, like goes to the inn and goes to Bethlehem and Jesus is born. Like, it seemed like a very cut and dry story to me. And then I started like looking at it. And then senior pastor at the time was like, gave me all these ideas, and then it like hit me of just like, whoa, there's so much more to the story than just like what I like the basics of what I thought. So I completely agree with what you said in terms of like Christmas is incredibly powerful for many reasons, but it's something that like it's also something we celebrate once a year. And if you let's say you become a Christian in June, you're not going to know anything about Christmas until December anyway. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I think we got to, you know, stop judging people so much a little bit and expecting them to know things.
Yeah, exactly. And as a pastor now, I've been in ministry for over 30 years, over 35 years. And the one almost, I don't know if I call it a frustrating thing, but every time at Christmas, it's like, okay, so now how can I preach a sermon on Christmas and be original? You know, it seems like I've preached so many sermons on Christmas that I've, you know,
at least 30.
I've preached it. I preached it from the perspective to the third camel on the right of Jesus or something like that. You know, you've just had so many unique ways of doing it. And it's funny though, how when I do approach the Christmas message, how there is something fresh that somehow God gives to me.
Absolutely.
And so let's talk a little bit deeper about Christmas and our understanding of it and what is important to understand about it and maybe certain ways where Christians have kind of got their knickers in a knot about Christmas and maybe some things where we need to say, hey, well, this is kind of creeping in. It's not really the best thing, and we kind of lose the spirit of Christmas as we go into it. So there's a few ways that we could possibly take this, couldn't we?
I think starting with like understanding like what Christmas is, like why we Christians celebrate it and make it such a big deal. And I've always coined it as the day the world changed. In my mind, like Christmas, I mean, of course, like we talk about Easter is the day the world changed, but that was expected, right? Like once we knew Jesus was coming, we knew that then Easter was coming. Like that was, you know, but this was the first moment of all of those prophecies coming true was the birth of the Messiah. And so in my mind, that is what, I mean, physically, it's what triggered it all. But I think like spiritually and emotionally and all those things, it's what changed, I think, the whole like, dare I try to be young and hip and say the vibe of the world in the sense of like it changed everybody's perspectives because this is prophecy from hundreds of years ago coming true.
And we have set our calendar by it.
Yeah. So
right?
clearly
when you stop and consider that it certainly was.
Yeah.
You know?
And so for me, that is like one thing about like Christmas that we don't always like think about is like it started it all quite literally physically, but also spiritually and so many other things.
So you mentioned it was the birth of the Messiah. Well, some people might be listening saying, what is this whole thing about Messiah? What exactly does that mean?
Well, I would ask you as well, but I would say the Messiah was a Jewish tradition. It was a king who was supposed to come and free them from their from their slavery, from their exile and all those things. And that was supposed to lead them into the promised land, into freedom, basically. And so it was supposed to be this big, mighty, kingly ruler. At least that's what they thought, that was supposed to come and free them.
Yeah. Yeah. I always think of it in terms of incarnation, that word that is used in the Bible when they talk to Joseph. And there was the time when the angels say, hey, this is what's going to happen is your wife. And I could just imagine Joseph at this time thinking about putting his wife away privately because she sits there and she's pregnant and he knows that he's not the father, right? And he's betrothed to be married to her. And so he, even in the midst of that, he is thinking of I guess the term is putting her away privately, which is basically not subjecting her to embarrassment.
He's taking the moral high road. He has every like right in the culture to divorce and to forget the betrothal, like has every right to like basically move her aside. Mm-hmm. But he takes the honorable high road and says, no, you know what? We're gonna.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important.
And so Christmas is the story of the birth of a child. And you think, well, what's the big deal about the birth of a child? But the angels basically say that he will be called Emmanuel, which means God with us. And the meaning of that ultimately is the fact that God comes down in human form. And the reason that he comes down in human form is that the idea is for him to pay the price for the sin of mankind.
Yeah.
Is the fact that right from the time of Adam and Eve, sin has been apparent. It has come into our world from that particular time. And the problem is with sin is that God cannot be in the same presence with sin.
And that was going to be my next point, is it's contrast. God lived in the garden with Adam and Eve previous them sinning. And so when you take and you contrast that with Jesus coming, who is God, but is coming in human form to then be with the people and everything. It's like kind of like God's redemption of his people being like, I'm actually going to come back into this world. I'm going to give you guys my presence. I'm going to be there with you and like help you find a way out of this mess.
Mm-hmm. And so it's important to understand that God comes, and God is 3 in 1. We need to understand that there's God the Father and God the Son, and he is referred to God the Son because of the act that has come. In him coming and becoming the whole purpose for him to come was to die for mankind so that we could have opportunity to be with God.
Yes.
That's why it is important as it is. Now, it's also important to understand, and we don't want to get too deep into theology in this, but it certainly is important to understand these things, is that when Jesus came, he didn't give up being God.
No.
He gave up the use of his divine attributes and came in the form of a child and a servant. And really, when you think deeply on that, is such a profound
He willingly gave up, in the sense of like he willingly chose to be a servant as opposed to being a king, is always how I've interpreted it. Because then I think that's like really, really powerful.
Yeah. The best illustration I've heard, and I can't even remember the authors, but so many years ago since I read the story, but he talks about the garbage dump in the Philippines.
Yeah. I could tell the story because you gave it to me for that. And it was this idea, there was a missionary in Manila in the Philippines, and basically it's this whole idea that this they go to the Philippines and they're traveling around and they're going and doing all the normal sightseeing things, and then they take them to a garbage dump. Now this garbage dump is unlike anything else in the world. It is tens of thousands of acres and it's massive. Like it's basically an entire like city's worth of trash, and there are people who have solely lived there and grown up there and have only lived in this trash heap.
Yes.
And they scavenge for food and they build shelters and everything. And there are Christian missionaries now who have gone into those places and have willingly, like, literally lived in garbage to be with
to reach them.
people. Yeah.
And to stop and consider the fact that there are people who have been born in a garbage dump and have lived in a garbage dump and have never been outside of that garbage dump is awfully sad. The thought of all that they are missing. And the whole punchline of this is that in comparison from God who is in heaven, experiencing all the wonder of heaven, coming down to earth. I would imagine we've never been to heaven, so we can't compare it. But I would imagine that it would be even more incredibly different because, from what we do understand of heaven, it's a fantastic, wonderful place. We can't even comprehend it, how wonderful it is to come down in earth. And comparison from earth to heaven would probably be like that garbage dump.
Well, and I always took it when I read that, when you sent that to me the first time, I also took it as the idea of like, the earth, like if you compare it to what the punishment of sin is, like death, like we currently live in a garbage dump, really, in comparison to like you put heaven on top and I put myself in like the scenario of like, no, that's like life on earth in a sense of like, of course we don't actually live in a garbage dump, but it's this idea that like our lives without Christ would be nothing. And so for him to like come down and willingly do that is just an ultimate act of like servanthood. And I find that just so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we use that word, the incarnation, as a Christian term for Christmas. And it all deals with the fact that God voluntarily comes as an act of love and grace, comes as a child and lives a perfect life and dies on the cross so that we might be able to spend eternity with God in heaven. And so it is that point in history where God chooses to come and be as a man. And many times, Logan, I know that we've discussed this as well, is that there's a big difference between the Christian faith and other religions. And many people say, well, it's all the same. Well, no, not really, because Christianity is the only religion where God chooses to come down to our level.
And on top of that, too, it's the only one. Sorry, this is just important to mention. It's the only one that does not put a singular person in charge of like the divine revelations and everything. So even in the story of Christmas, you have Mary, Joseph, the wise men, like a bunch of these people all have similar experiences with angels, with God, to understand what actually is like going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. And so, in that particular passage, it is called, you will call his name Emmanuel. And it says Emmanuel means God with us. Now, on the 21st of December, we're going to be discussing that. At least a number of the pastors on the staff are going to be discussing that. And so I'm hoping that you'll be able to visit us on Sunday, or at least check us out online and just find a little bit deeper as to what that means.
And understanding, too, that like Christmas is much more than just like the birth of Jesus. Of course it is. Like that's an incredible story. But as just human beings, even, like it's an incredible moment in time to also just take stock, reflect, and like actually like kind of slow down. We're actually going to look at it in like the worldly sense of it a little bit. I wanted to talk about that at some point as well. Just like understanding the like the reason for the season is always Jesus. It is always celebrating the incarnation, the birth of the Savior. But also understanding that like sometimes Christians can maybe even learn a thing or two from some of the worldly traditions. I know I can't believe I just said that, but hear me out before I get absolutely torched in the comments and everything. God would want us to celebrate. God would want us to spend time with our families. God would want us to show love and adoration and take time to be with each other and to have community and to do all of those things. Now, is that an excuse to go out and get wasted? No. Is that an excuse to go and like, do all that kind of stuff? No, but at its core, the celebration of Christmas in the worldly sense, I think actually is still pretty Christian and is still very like honoring to Christ in some ways.
There's certainly elements to how somebody who doesn't know Jesus celebrates Christmas, and those who do celebrate Christmas. There certainly are similarities. I think, especially when you take a look at some of the stories, some of the things that we read, and some of the traditions that people have, that the intent is to be able to express love, to be generous at Christmas, to love people, to take that time to slow down and say, hey, here I am in this hurry, and there are people who are in need around me, and I need to really think about them. I would certainly agree with you in the fact that there is still that good element that we can look to at Christmas time.
Absolutely.
It is a time for giving, and really Christmas at its core is about the ultimate gift.
Yes.
Really.
Yeah.
So that would be what you would be referring to.
And I just want to know that, like, it was a discussion that I've been having in my head about, like, how should Christians even celebrate Christmas? I think that's a good question to ask ourselves of, like, what is a good Christian version of Christmas?
Well, that's a really good question to ask, because how I celebrate Christmas and how maybe someone who is a board member, or people who are very, very strong in their walk with Christ, they would celebrate Christmas totally different than I would. And I don't know if there is a difference one way or the other.
No, and I wouldn't say there's a right or wrong way in this, but I think it's a good discussion to have, because, like, I think Christmas obviously we get lost in the consumerism. I'll raise my hand wholeheartedly and say I get wrapped up in the consumerism of Christmas and everything. And I, like, some years, like, you just trying to buy gifts as opposed to actually, like, wanting to, like, give somebody something, right? It's almost out of obligation, out of opposed to, like, a giving, willing heart. But it's like, I think celebrating Christmas should, obviously, the core of it should be Jesus, but I think there's more to it than that. Yeah. And maybe that's where I'm breaching out of the Bible a little bit, because the Bible doesn't say anything about that.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if, like, this is one of those times where we Christians can maybe take a lesson from the world a little bit.
Sure, there is, and we're really dealing with extremes. My wife just had a conversation with someone, and they said, "Well, I spend maybe a couple $100 on my husband, and maybe a couple $100 within my family, and then I spend about $2,000 on my daughter." I said, "What? You spend $2,000? Well, we have to get her laptop, and we have to." I'm thinking, well, I think that you're really missing the point there, and probably getting yourself into a lot of trouble. Now, I have friends, very close friends of mine, and they don't really give a whole lot of gifts at Christmas at all. And their mentality and their thinking, and I certainly respect it, is we want to keep the Christmas story and the reality and the importance of Christmas about Jesus.
Yeah.
And yet at the same time, and what they do is they're very high on giving gifts for their birthday and for occasions, and and particularly Valentine's Day is a big day for them, where they're able to celebrate love and give gifts and stuff like that. So they're not. Whereas I'm very much, my mentality is this, and I don't know if I'm right or if I'm wrong, but my thought is, if there's one time that I can somehow show my wife that I love her, it is Christmas, and I'm going to outgive her at Christmas, because if anyone deserves appreciation and to be lifted up, of course, I'm not lifting her above Jesus, but the fact is, it is the one opportunity that I have to do right by her. And so very often I will not try and sit there and say, "What do you want?" And then she's just, "Get me this gift and that gift." And I do it. So a lot of times I'll try and get her something that she doesn't expect, she doesn't know about, and stuff like that. And that is just the way that we have done. Now, on Valentine's Day and birthday, and that, very small, not a whole lot, maybe small, some things that we do, and they're just the opposite. And I don't know if I'm right and they're wrong, or how that goes down. And I don't know if there has to be a hard and fast rule. Every person has to kind of figure that out themselves.
And that was what I wanted when I made this question, was to just have a discussion, because I would probably actually more fall under the idea of, like, your friends, of, like, I like getting, don't get me wrong, I like receiving gifts at Christmas. Everybody likes getting a gift, and I like giving gifts, but in some ways, I would much rather give one really nice, more thoughtful gift than five per se, like mediocre, sort of like phoned in type gifts. And I'm busy. We're busy. We're pastors. I don't get to see my family a whole lot. And so in my mind, I would much rather like not have to focus on like giving gifts and all that other stuff. And I would much rather focus on like just spending time with my family and loving and different things in my way. And so my approach is like, well, let me focus on like spending time with you or doing things that like we can do together, or things of that nature that maybe create memories, or different things like that. Like the last couple of years, especially for my nieces, because I'll get them like board games and we'll play them that day usually, or for my brothers in years past, I usually get them toys from our childhood that we love, that we're like, we're all almost 30 and everything like that. We're not buying toys anymore, but it's like a couple years ago, I bought us all Beyblades, those things where you rip them in their little tops and they battle each other. And it's like, I got them that for Christmas, and it was just like a fun little like trip down memory lane for my brothers and I.
Those used to be called battling tops for those older in the who are listening here.
And sorry, I just have to say this. My mom used to buy those for us for Christmas all the time. Like in our stocking, we'd get one. And we used to do them in the washing machine. We'd have battles with them in the metal drum of the washing machine. There'd be sparks and different things flying, and Mom would come home and she'd just get mad at us and everything. But the point I'm trying to make is like, there are so many different ways that Christians can incorporate some of the worldly sense of celebrating Christmas while also still like keeping the reason being on Jesus. And one of the ones that I hope to instill someday, if I ever become a father or whatever that looks like, is that friends of mine from a previous church, they told this story and it has stuck with me ever since. And it's something that I think a lot of families could benefit from. They're like Christmas, they do the normal family over and all that kind of stuff. But most years in the morning, they would have like breakfast and they would have a cake. Yes, cake for breakfast, but it was a birthday cake. And it was like happy birthday Jesus on it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what a cute, but like poignant, powerful way to like first thing in the morning, wake up and remember that this day is Jesus's birthday. And then you stem that conversation. And then as they got older, they would talk about the Christmas story, and they would move on from just reading a children's book about it to reading the Bible, and then to like, different thing. But they had a birthday cake, or they had pancakes that were shaped like a cake and different things. And it said, happy birthday, Jesus. And ever since I've heard that, it has just stuck with me in such a powerful way.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think you're kind of hitting on two different things. So how do I, as an individual, maintain the spirit and the importance of Christmas while at the same time enjoying time with family and gifts and stuff like that? Because it certainly can be put to the back of that. Sometimes we forget to recognize the birth of the Savior, the incarnation, as we do. And how do I do that individually and as a family? What are the things that we do? And you might be here and you might be part of a family, or you may have young kids and that becomes a very realistic thing. And I've often felt that if you just do one thing as a family, it is good. But I find that there are a number of things that you can do. Sometimes there are special stories. There are certain videos and things that you can get online. There is the Christmas Eve service that actually helps. There are a lot of smaller things that you can do so that all of a sudden it's not just one thing that you kind of do and get out of the way and then hand you your presents.
For sure.
Right? All of a sudden, if you can do two or three things and to be able to have the intimate conversations with your kids about the importance of it that goes beyond a story of a baby being born in a manger. And that's where I think it really begins to take light and life as you're raising your kids as you walk with them day by day. That's probably the thing, is that as you are a parent, you don't want it to be, here's the one story, we're going to read it and get on with it. It is, this is life to us. This is the most important story to us.
Yeah.
And to be able to do it in a multiple ways where it becomes part of the lifestyle. as opposed to the routine that you will do on a Sunday or on a Christmas morning or Christmas Eve evening.
And the flip side of that too is, don't be like the Pharisee that's in the temple praying so loudly above the other person, saying that they're so good because they don't do this and they don't do that. That's also like wrong to sort of like the flip side of that is like you talk about like celebrating personally and with family or whatever. Don't also think that you're more pious than your family because you're going to try to say that you don't want gifts or you're not doing that or whatever. Like that's also, I think, is not very good either. Does that make sense? Like what I'm trying to say of just like, I'm just reminded of the Pharisee in the temple who's praying next to the person and is like, God, thank you for not making me like this person because I didn't sin or I didn't do this. And then there are Christians, there are people who try to make themselves holier than thou around Christmas. And they're like, well, I don't do gifts. It's all about Jesus and all this kind of, I won't go to a party and I won't do this or whatever. And I'm like, well, that's also wrong though, because the other greatest command is love people.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like,
it certainly is the balance is certainly something that you have to figure out, because really, as we said right at the very start, Christmas is the time that changed it all.
Yeah.
To be able to recognize that and to be able to celebrate that while at the same time taking the opportunity to be with family and give gifts and to be able to enjoy that time is an important factor.
Absolutely.
I wish I could say, here's the formula.
right. Yeah.
But the thing is, there is no formula. You have to allow the Holy Spirit, as you are a Christian, to help you. And the other thing, and we've kind of touched on this, I don't think that I have come to the end of learning about the Christmas story and all that it entails. You know, I'm doing a sermon on the Song of Mary this Sunday. All these things that all of a sudden I'm learning. The depth of that scripture and what it meant, and Mary, all that she had gone through, the incredible story. I will continually be a student. I don't think that and that's probably the magic of scripture, is that you will continually be learning into the incredible depth and love and grace of God. And so those are important features, really, to think about at Christmas time. There's always going to be those people who are more religious than you that will make you feel bad for maybe some of the things you want to celebrate. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you're the one who has to determine these things yourself.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm like I said, the whole point of this discussion was to spark ideas in people and to maybe think like, oh, maybe I haven't been doing this, or I haven't been doing that, because I can't sit here. I'm not a parent, so I can't sit here and tell a family with kids how to do that at Christmas, right? Like I can't do that, but I can speak to the adults. I can speak to people around my level and understand that, like, generally on Christmas, I'll be completely honest. Like, and this is where I have to check myself too as a pastor and understand that, like, we work every holiday. And so, like, Christmas is hard for me to celebrate because I just finished Christmas Eve. And then 9 times out of 10, the last like 3 years, it's only a day or two later, we have a Sunday that we have to get ready. And so, like, for me, I'm just being completely real. Christmas is hard to celebrate just because I can't get in that like mode as easily. But something that I make sure that I do is every Christmas morning when I wake up, I take a couple minutes and I thank God. Like, I take intentional time and I don't ask for anything. And when I pray, I just count my blessings and I thank God for everything that is like, that has happened. And that is something that has like really helped like kind of center like my view and everything, because like, yeah, we can get maybe not jaded, but we can get a little tired. We can get a little like, you know, apprehensive or just like so focused on like doing the ministry, doing the work, whatever. And I think everybody in their pastors or not could relate in some way of getting so focused on the work of the season that you kind of neglect to remember that this should be a celebratory, like reflective season.
The routine overtakes the relationship.
Absolutely.
And that it is funny. And this whole podcast, as we were starting it, had to deal with the fact that we want people to grow incrementally.
Yeah.
right? If you are at a, if 0 is total unsaved and 100 is where you're just next to heaven, and right in that whole spectrum, you're at a 32. We want to bring you to a 32 and a half or 33. The whole process of implemental growth, and I think that we see that at Christmas. That again, I am not at the point where I have figured everything out at Christmas. I certainly have figured out the big foundation stones, but there are certain elements of Christmas that challenge me, especially as you're dealing with life issues, and the fact that the whole Christmas story brings about an opportunity to look at Christ and His grace afresh in our lives. And I remember, just as we were kind of talking about this podcast, I remember, and some of you who might be listening, this is you right now. I gave my life to Jesus as a young teenager, and I know that, my family wasn't really, oh, this is wonderful news for you. They're like, okay, so now what's going on? Our kid is going to become a religious nut sort of thing. That was their feeling.
Yep.
Right? But all of a sudden, there is something new about Christmas in the fact that it takes on a new meaning. It represents everything that I believe in Christ. But yet, when I woke up on Christmas morning, I was with a family who knew nothing about that at all. They knew nothing. And slowly, as the conversation began to go, it became a little bit more an opportunity. And I've always seen and I've always prayed over Christmas as the fact that it is actually an open door for God to be able to speak to the people who are closest to me. And maybe that is perhaps the one hinge pin now that I think of as being among the most important things at Christmas is God allow me to be able to have an opportunity to speak in to people's lives who are open for that little time. Right?
Yeah.
So
it's important too, because and I didn't put this in there, but I felt to mention it. Christmas can also be a challenging time for people, right? But beyond the personal thing, but some people have lost families, some people going through divorce. Obviously, Christmas hits everybody very differently in that some sense. Some people really have tension with their family, and some are spending it alone because they're students, or there was 1 or 2 Christmases where I didn't get to come home. I was in Bible college, and it was the terrible pandemic, and I literally spent one Christmas just alone in my dorm room. Luckily, my good friends invited me over to their house for Boxing Day, celebration and stuff. But it's I can remember feeling that weight of it. And I'm not saying that it was never a pity thing. I'm an introvert. I like being alone. So I can say that it was restful in some ways. But it still made me take stock a little bit and just kind of reflect on that. And so if you're somebody listening and Christmas isn't for you, maybe you're a Christian and you just don't getting wrapped up in all of that. I think that's okay. I do actually think that it's okay to kind of not like the spectacle a little bit of Christmas, and it can be a hard season for somebody.
Certainly can. Well, I've always said this, that it will intensify whatever emotion, overwhelming feeling you're having at the time. And so if you are have a whole bunch of family around and everything is going good, it gets intensified. But if you're lonely and you're going through a difficult time, that is also intensified at Christmas as well. And so a lot of times we need to be aware of that, because many of us know it's a high time for depression and discouragement, and we certainly live in a society that have many people who are going through those difficult times. Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. I wanted to give a shout out to those people and understand that we know you, we hear you, and we understand that Christmas can be challenging beyond some of the little things that maybe we have discussed today.
And the thing is, the gifts and all the things that would normally happen in our society at Christmas will not make you feel any better. But the incarnation and the reality of the incarnation does.
Yeah.
It sets us in a place that goes beyond ourselves, that there is a God who cares for us, that there is an eternity to gain, and that we were at a point where we were hopeless to mend our relationship with God, but God coming to earth sets that up. And that brings about a joy that really can't be gained through getting a gift, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think Christmas is one of those things where whether you have a love-hate relationship with it, of all the things we covered, I think exactly what you said. None of that actually really matters at the end of the day because that's all temporary.
Sure.
Right? And I'm not saying your trials and tribulations don't matter. I just mean in the grand scheme of things, they're temporary issues.
Yeah.
And we have the permanent solution already.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that that's like a really, really important.
Yeah. Hey, well, the other thing is, and we were just talking about this as well, as we kind of wind things up. One thing that Christmas does is it certainly instills memories.
Absolutely.
I remember Christmases as a kid, and I remember times where we used to go. We had a little thing where we went to our cousins and our grandparents, and that was the big deal. And there probably are situations that you remember as a child, or maybe gifts that perhaps you have gotten, or stuff like that.
Talk about a segue, boss. I figured what better way to end a Christmas podcast than you and I, we get so deep and we talk a lot about like real things, but when was the last time we just got lighthearted and just like, celebrated a little bit? And so I wanted to end with like a couple memories and like maybe what was the best gift you've ever received and maybe the best gift you've ever gave.
I come to realize how happy I am at Christmas because right now, even my kids will ask me, so what do you want?
Yeah.
I've already got everything. You know what I mean? In terms of just, the love of my family and the things that are important to me. And so many times I'll just say, hey, get me an Amazon card so that when I do want something, I'll have money in my account to get that. But I remember when I wasn't married yet. I can't even remember whether I was engaged at the time. And so it was either my fiance or she was my girlfriend. And she bought, and I think I'm a teenager at this time. We were teenagers. She had bought a football, but it was an official NFL football.
Nice.
Like genuine leather.
Genuine
This
leather.
was, I think I still have it packed away somewhere.
Was it weathered? Did they do the thing where they put like the mud on it and everything? Was it all weathered?
No, but let me continue with the story here. So she wrapped it up and knew that I was probably wanting to get that. She wrapped it up like a football, like you knew that it was a football. Like wasn't in a box or anything, and she just kind of looked like a great big wrapped candy with the little things at the end, and so I was thrilled to get this, and it was like I think Christmas Eve or something like that, and I just drove her home because I was excited, and my brother was excited about it as well because both of us like to play football, of
course.
And so what I did is I drove her home, but when I drove her home, I took the football with me. I took the present because I was afraid my brother was going to mess around with it.
Yeah, be your brother, yeah.
So we went, and I took her home, and I came back, and then for about an hour, we went outside with the football. There was snow on the ground and everything, and we played football with the wrapper still on it.
Nice.
We didn't unwrap it. It got a little bit weathered.
Of course.
And then we put it under the tree. Ragged and almost half torn apart so that it would be wrapped. That to me is one of the most memorable presents that I had. That was kind of a neat thing. So
I mean, I gotta say, one of the best gifts I have ever given is two. One was last year. I was ordering something for the church, whether it was like a youth leader gift or something. And it was like an insane amount of cost saving to order one more thing. And so I was like, Chris, I'll pay for my order, but like we'll save the church a bunch of money if I order like one other thing. I'll pay the difference, whatever. And so I ordered a custom mug for my mom, and I put like a bunch of pictures on it and everything. And that was like one of the best gifts I've ever given, just because it's like, this is maybe mean of me, but if I can make my mom cry when she opens her Christmas gift, it means that I did it, because it means that it's sentimental and it is like hit that right spot. It's not that I like to see my mom cry; it's that I know I like got her something that actually has like value,
sentimental value,
yes,
that means something to her. Yes.
And then the other one was I played a prank on my oldest brother. I bought like I was 14. I did not have a lot of money or anything like that. So it was pretty small gifts back then. And I like bought like a $20 gift card or something for Tim's because he used to go get coffee in the morning. And I put it in a giant box, filled it with a bunch of boxes. But I also took like macaroni, just like KD or whatever, and I taped it a couple times to the inside of the box. When he picks it up, he thinks it's Lego or he thinks it's something. And then he's opening for like 3 minutes because I duct taped it. So I put like rolls of duct tape on this thing and I like made it like impenetrable. And he's like digging through and he finds the macaroni and he's like kind of like, he's thanks Logan. Like I appreciate it. I got lunch now or something. And I was like, no, like keep looking. There is something in there. And then he finally finds it. And it was just like, it was a fun memory, like in that way of just like a fun little gift that I gave.
Sure.
But I will say one of the best gifts that I ever got, and I actually can't remember if I got it for my birthday or not because it's very close to, it's a month apart, was a GT Snow Racer.
Oh, yes. I remember those.
It was, I think my parents actually still have it somewhere because if we do, I got to give it to my niece. We broke the front ski a little bit, but it still totally worked. That was a blast of like just something as a kid and everything. And then I don't know, one other thing that I wanted to ask because I'm curious about this. It's a 2-part question. Do you like Christmas carols? And do you like them as worship music? This is the debate I've been having with people in a fun context. This is not a very serious thing. And then what's your favorite Christmas movie?
I don't like Christmas music as much as my wife does. She'll say that I hate it. I don't think that I hate it. I just get tired of it really quickly. I certainly appreciate some of the deep theology of some of the original Christmas songs, for sure. That really express the incarnation. A Christmas movie, hands down, is A Christmas Story about Ralphie and the Red Ryder, BB gun. Certainly is one for me because it's most relatable to me. Plus the fact that Victoria School, where they filmed it, was only a 10-minute walk from my house. It was in St. Catharines. And I remember being in the school. Actually, Angela, when she was out of college and that, they had since closed the school up and they had a company that had it. And she worked in the school. And so there was something about the fact that as I've watched the movie, I have recognized parts of St. Catharines because it was filmed. It was filmed there. And, certainly some of the stories that he had told are certainly relatable to me as a kid. There was a Scott Farkas that I knew of who was the big bully and just certain things. And the way his father was kind of like the way my dad had been at times as well. So I think that would probably be the most relatable movie to me, for sure.
I mean, I'm like you. I like certain kinds of Christmas music, but I can't listen to it all the time. And my hard and fast rule is I will not listen to Christmas music before December starts. And I will never decorate before Remembrance Day, ever. Like, I will never, ever do that.
Now, you're opening a whole other can of worms
when it
comes to that.
I know, but I will never decorate before Remembrance Day. That is just like I'm
for the record, feel that we should be free to be able to have a Christmas tree up whenever we want.
Sure.
But we won't get into that debate today.
As for and then my favorite Christmas song, I don't have a favorite Christmas song or anything like that. Anything by the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, that's my go-to Christmas music. It's awesome. They don't tour anymore. I wish they did. They got like a whole melody section of electric guitars and pyrotechnics, and it's just like, it's awesome. And I don't know, my go-to Christmas movie, if I'm going like classic, I love It's a Wonderful Life. I think that story is so tear-jerking and just like, and it's godly and everything. And, I think there's just so much like to that.
I don't know if I've ever watched a whole episode of It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh man,
I've fallen asleep partway through.
It's black and white, and yes, it's long. Like it's long. It's actual true storytelling. And one of our, shout outs to Allison. She was in an amazing rendition of it right around this time, like last year for one of her classes. I saw that show twice. I loved it. It was awesome. It was like a modern telling of it. It was really well done. And so I love It's a Wonderful Life. And then Home Alone. How do you not, the movie came out when I was a kid. So it was like a little bit before. Anyway, that's That's that. And that just, I want to end with this. We can watch Christmas movie, we can celebrate, we can do all of these things. We can joke around about when to put up the Christmas tree and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, none of that, all of that fails in comparison to the true gift, which is Emmanuel, which is the incarnation of Christ. And that's.
Yes. And that is our hope for you. That everyone have a great time with family and friends, and those who are feeling lonely will be able to find a connection somewhere, and those who are hurting, our heart really goes out to you, and we want to do the best that we can as a church to minister to anybody in that position. But ultimately, at the end of the day, our hope is that you will experience to the fullness the blessing that comes with knowing Jesus based on the act that Jesus did, which represents the Christmas day.
Yeah.
God with us, revealed in us.
Yeah.
And with that, we say,
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. God bless.